Welcome to Rock That Relationship, a podcast about all things relationship with Corey and Tracy.
Now let's get real and start creating relationships that rock.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Rock That Relationship. Tracy and I are back today to talk and banter a little bit about the flow and pace of a new relationship. So this is really exciting and interesting, particularly, given where Tracy's at right now in her dating process, but also, dating and relationships, is still very fresh for me too. And, we certainly have a lot of insight to share. So Tracy, let's get us kicked off. Okay. Thinking about this, you're in a new relationship or you're thinking about being in a relationship, but you've met somebody, right? How does a new relationship typically unfold for you? Like from the moment you connect maybe on an app or you meet someone all the way till you decide it's a relationship. I mean, you don't need to tell the whole story, but how do they kind of typically unfold? What are those first few stages?
Are we talking in generalities? Or are we talking in me in particular?
Well, we're talking about the generalities of your typical relationship, but you, because okay. You and I both know that our unfoldings couldn't be more different from each other sometimes. So
correct. And this is what I want to say just as a precursor that's so interesting is a week and a half ago, I had no interest in the apps or dating or any of that. And then suddenly I was like, you know what? Why not? And so what I do is get on the apps, a bunch of them. And I don't write that much about myself. And then I see what comes in. And a lot of it I have to discard right away. And then I see if there's a connection or something interesting. And then I reach out to those people who have something, we could have in common. And then as you keep talking to people, it just kind of makes itself clear who you're more connected to. So I happen to have 3 people I'm very connected to right now.
Okay. Well, yeah. And I mean, I think that there's some similarities too. When I got on the apps, I did that, but I didn't, let's just say I kept a lot more people in my queue a lot longer than I probably should have. But I know for you, you've been getting on a bunch of the apps just to see, kind of cast your net wide.
Well, and kind of for this podcast, right? So our listeners can find out like what's helpful and what's not helpful. And I thought if I'm going to go big. I'm just going to do it. I'm going to do all the apps. I'm going to see which are helpful, which are not, what it's good to put, what kind of things will draw people in and what kind of people you'll get. And then I've connected with 3 people where, I pretty much move it to phone or, like texting or Facebook, Instagram pretty quickly because I never know how long I'm going to stay on the apps. And I think that it's important to notice people's texting habits and things or messaging habits, right? There are some people who just they're non-responsive. And now that's just a waste of my time. It's not even worth it. Yeah. Remember when you were doing that and you were like, well, this person hasn't responded or this person's taking, 2 days. Like, I don't need that. And I feel like they're either not in the place that I'm at or want to be. And so far in a week, so one of the 3 that's transitioned to phone calls, 7 hours yesterday.
Yeah. Wow. That's long.
7 hours of phone calls.
I like though that you frame this as, romance in regard to trying to do research for our podcast, right? Like,
yes.
Like, you're taking one for the team.
Exactly. I'm really helping. I mean, because the apps are so interesting, right? And I actually also have done Bumble BFF and you actually met 2 of the people that I met from Bumble BFF over the weekend. So, I think when we're thinking about dating again, we also have to think about just kind of expanding our circle of friends. And I had an interesting conversation with one of those people. One of those people has been pretty isolated for the last 2 years after getting divorced. And another one, she's contemplating, her marriage ending and they're reaching out for friends. And it doesn't matter whether we're gay or straight or what, like it's a real connection, right? But then there's the part of the apps. I mean, Bumble in particular, Bumble has Bumble BFF, and I don't know if the other ones do, but you can be on the dating part or you can be on the friend part. And on the other ones, I was a little bit nervous about it, but people say okay, I'm looking for a long-term relationship, or I'm looking for friends, or I'm looking for, I don't know yet. And I think that's important to pay attention to that. Like, did you pay attention to that? Like what those people said they were looking for?
Yeah. You know what? I made the assumption that when people were on there that they were looking for a relationship. And
Not
I think
always.
I was
Yeah.
blindsided because it was some people were looking for a friend, but they were on the dating part, or they were looking for something short term, something casual, which is so not me. I know in some places they were looking for a third, for a not like a non-monogamy or or an open relationship, which wasn't what I was looking for either. And so I think if I were to do it all over again, I would definitely have more discernment for that, because I went into those looking for a partner, a future partner, and I was very clear about that. And I think some of the people I came across maybe weren't looking for that.
Yeah. And it does say, and I think, I always approach people saying friendship, because I don't want to I'm the one that jumps in too quickly. And so I just want to say, hey, let's be friends and check it out. Right. And see if there is a connection beyond that. And you have to look at, I open myself up to the whole world. And I think that's, I guess it really depends on what you're looking for. If you were just like, I want a partner only, but you're open to friends, right? To making friends, or you're not on there for making friends?
I mean, I'd be happy to make friends with people, and I have actually, through the apps. But I think I was pretty particular that I wanted to make connections for a relationship, because I have a lot of friends. Not that you can't have more, but I have a really nice circle of friends. So, but I think, when I think about relationships typically unfolding for me, and I'm going to reference back to, we had an episode with Dr. Frankie on here, and it was really powerful because she talked a lot about, kind of playing the field a little bit right at the beginning. And I've never done that before. I've always met somebody, I kind of honed in right on them, and I'm like, that's the person. And then I date them until it turns into a relationship. And I've never done it really where I've dated a number of people at the same time. I sort of tried when I was on the apps the last time, and I got so uncomfortable. I mean, you remember this. I got so uncomfortable that I actually had like 2 or 3 people that I was talking to at the same time. And I was like, oh, I don't like this. I just want to have like, here's your person. Here's a person that you just need to date, and then you'll have a relationship and you'll be good to go.
But what did Dr. Frankie tell us? And I've been using that, because when you first start to date, you shouldn't limit yourself. And as the more time you spend with someone, the more that is revealed about that person, and that you reveal to them, that maybe not a good fit. And I think if, our go-to or our default is, oh, I'm going to be in a relationship right away. This person's awesome. This is the person. Now you've cut yourself out of a whole bunch of people. I think, you need to be honest with people, like, oh, I am seeing, I'm meeting people, and that means I'm going out for dinner. I'm going out to do things with people. And it is interesting. I think that it's all based on your comfort level, right? And so if you're thinking about how is it unfolding, am I sticking to just texting? Am I just messaging on, Instagram or something like that? Or are we now taking it to a phone call, right? So the person that I started talking to on the phone, we were texting a lot, and she's like, do you want to take it live? And I was like, okay, great. And then that really,
I love that.
That was really good though. But we didn't do FaceTime. That would have freaked me out. I actually did that early on with, my then to become a partner. And, no, I need to wait on the FaceTime thing. You look at me now in this screen, right? I look dark, like in a dark light. I have you know what I mean? Like I think it's very hard to present well in video. Like,
I mean, if you had the microphone, I'd be duly impressed though. I'd be like, wow, she came prepared for this date. She brought her own like radio recording level microphone.
I would be like, oh my God, goodbye. This person has issues, but like I've done that just on FaceTime before, and it's not good. I think you have to really spend time, in my opinion. For me, what works best is a lot of messaging, either text or messenger or whatever, and then take it to a phone call. And then if you've been talking on the phone, then you can take it to video.
Yeah. Well, I did that. I think I've referenced it on this podcast, is I did the messaging, and then we took it to the texting, and then we took it to the phone calls, and then we did a couple FaceTime or Zoom or something, but it was dark and it was kind of like, I can't really see that person. And, of course it's like angled and it's like, I only get like half the face. And I don't know if that was purposeful or not now that I'm looking back at it, but and then it took us a while to actually meet up in person because we lived in different states. And I'm not sure that feasibly or logistically we could have met any sooner, but when we met, there was no chemistry on my end, but I had allowed myself.
You mean when you met in person?
And we met in person. Yeah. There was no chemistry on my end. And it was like, I had been having like an emotional connection with her this whole time. And we were almost in what I think she determined after we were done that was a relationship. And I was like, I don't think this is a relationship because I was actually like going out on dates with other people.
Right.
But she was seeing it as we are progressing towards a relationship. We talk every day on the phone. This is my person. And of course, like I said, it wasn't until after the fact that I realized we didn't establish the rules. Like we didn't say like, I'm going out with other people or she's not going out with other people, or that we were leading up into girlfriendship. I don't know what we were doing, but when I met her, I felt like, and there was no chemistry. I almost felt like I was breaking up with someone I was in a relationship rather than going out on a first date with someone because of the way that it progressed through the apps.
Yes. So looking back, would you do it differently? So let's say theoretically, I'm going to meet someone in person tomorrow, right? We've been texting only. So do I have a conversation before, or do I wait until we get to dinner and see how things are and say, I am seeing other people. And this is a person that I would like to maintain contact with, even if a dating thing doesn't work out. But like you, I've already formed a deep connection with someone, and I'm like, I don't want to throw out everybody else because I don't know what's going to happen. But then I also feel like a cheater, and I'm not, because like nothing's established yet. But it's like, if you talk to someone on the phone for 7 hours and you're already planning on meeting them, but yet we're in different, we're like 7 hours apart, it's going to take time, right, to logistically be able to do that. And so do you cut off people in the meantime? Dr. Frankie would say no, but we had this discussion of how much do you need to tell people? I told you don't have to tell everybody everything, right?
Yeah. Well, and that's what got me into a weird spot, because I felt like at some point I had developed an emotional relationship with someone, and going out on dates with other people, it wasn't cheating per se, but I felt like there was something a little shady about it, even though it wasn't shady. We weren't exclusive. We hadn't even met each other in person, but we had developed an emotional relationship over time. And so, yeah, I feel like what you're feeling, I didn't want to cut those other people off, but at the same time, I'm like, am I going down the rabbit hole with this one person to the exclusion of allowing myself to have emotional connections with other people? And so there's that part. It's like, what's a relationship? What's an emotional relationship? What's a physical relationship?
Well, and I think that if you had, that's interesting, because I watched your whole process, right? And now you're watching mine, and you were really into that person. And if I know there were other people that you were also interested in, but maybe not as much. But then by the time that you met that person, you were totally not interested in them. And the other people had kind of fallen by the wayside, and it's like, you didn't tell them bye, but you put less energy there. And that's what I'm wondering is, like, on the apps, there is the opportunity to meet a lot of people. And I know we've had Dr. Frankie and, Martha Bodyfelt talking about apps, right? That they're difficult, they're hard. And, one thing I want to say is, like, starting back out on this journey on the apps, like, I told myself, I'm at the happiest place I've ever been in my life. I'm really, truly happy. I've had some big therapeutic breakthroughs, and I'm not going to let whatever happens on there affect me or my self-esteem. Right. And you get on there, and it brings up, okay, oh, I failed in these past relationships, or I just was dating someone who was, super mean. Like, am I even fit for this? And then you get on there, and a lot of craziness is happening. There are a lot of trolls on there. They're pretty easily, discoverable immediately. Just their pictures seem, it's like absurd, like a 23-year-old messaging me, right? That's not going to happen, but then there are one out of every probably 10 people somebody you can really connect with, but I think one of the, either Dr. Frankie or Martha said, like having a buddy, like, you know, to like keep you in check. And I know that I had to tell you, do not go down a rabbit hole of like, oh, I'm not good enough, or these people don't, like, people would ghost you, remember? And it's like, who knows what is going on in these people's lives? But it's very hard to take that personally, not personally.
Right, right. Well, and I think like if I had to do it all over again, that particular situation, I wouldn't have invested so much of my emotional energy into one person at such the onset of dating when I had other people I was interested in. I would probably be upfront with this person and say, I am seeing other people. And I didn't, partially because I wasn't sure what I wanted. If I wanted to do that, I didn't really know if I wanted her to be doing that. I just didn't want to have the conversation because I was afraid of what we would end up talking about. And then third, I don't care where we're located. I wouldn't have waited 8 weeks into our emotional development to meet. I would have been like, listen, we got to figure this out. I don't care if we got to get on airplanes. At some point, we got to get on an airplane. Let's just do this. Meet up in the weekend. And I used to joke, like, let's meet halfway and have coffee. And
well, what if you just meet? I mean, that person was coming from the East Coast, so that's a little long. But mine is actually, I could drive there, or we could meet halfway, and it would be a reasonable day trip. Do you limit yourself to that, or do you, okay, I'm going to spend a weekend where that person is and get a hotel room, you know, just to be not, I don't fear for physical safety, but like emotional safety, right?
I mean, you may want to like plan on going up for like a weekend, wherever your halfway point
or one night,
night and have lunch, but don't make any assumptions that you're going to stay the night together in a hotel or something. Just go up and have lunch. If it goes well, keep the date going. If it doesn't, stay the night.
Then you have an out. I think that's the thing. So it's important to have an out, like have your out pre-planned.
Assume the out.
If you're uncomfortable.
I assume the out. That's the difference, right? Assume that you're going to go back to your respective hotel rooms. And if something changes, then one of you says, would you like to come back to my room or something? Or would you like to extend the date a little further? Or would you like to see each other again tomorrow? That it's not an assumption that you are going to do that. That's just value added. Our date is dinner from 7 to 9. If the date is going well, then we can extend the date, but not the assumption that the date is already extended and that one of you has to be like, listen, I'm uncomfortable. I'd like to cut it back. No, the assumption is this is where we're meeting up. We're going to dinner. And if we want to hang out more after that, then we'll invite each other to do that while we're in this space. It's like a reframing, you know, and that way no one has to be like, listen, I really don't want to spend more time with you. Like,
but I think like, number one, I want to say, do you say to a lady, do you want to extend this date? Like the way that we talk to people is probably so different. Like, I
would say that. I would say,
how do you say it?
No, I would just say, listen, hey, I'm having a really good time. Do you want to spend some more time together? I mean, we just finished dinner. We talked about that. Would you like to, you know, go out? I don't really drink, but, you know, go out and have a coffee, or would you like to meet up in the morning?
You can go to a cocktail bar, you know, and have a mocktail.
I do. And I have
you go to have a mocktail. Exactly.
But I would say that I don't say, this date is going well. Would you like to extend it by 32 minutes and 47 seconds? I mean, I might say, hey, I'm having a really nice time. Would you, you know, I'd like to spend some more time with you.
Wait, what did you say originally? You said, okay, so you assume the out. So I think you were saying the same thing. Plan for the contingency. You got to have a plan for the fact that things might not go well. Right. But I would address that at the beginning. I feel like, you know, I need to say up front, like, hey, if there's not a thing here between both of us, or we don't feel the connection, I hope we both cannot be offended, you know, and be just upfront about it, and then transition to friendship or whatever, you know. Okay. We start out like we're here to date. Right. I mean, I'm one of those people that like, if I'm already like at all interested in dating you, but then it's, maybe I form a deeper connection with someone else and I want to pursue that. I don't want to lose that person, not because I want to keep like a side piece, right? Or a potential, oh, I could go back to this person. It's that obviously you connected with that person in the first place. And I think it, you know, those can become friends, right? And I've even made friends through people that you met on the apps.
Right. And I mean, so that's the big mishap I had with the person I had met, was not, we had sort of danced around that, you know, one of us might not feel it, but we didn't really say like what happens if that were to happen, right. And we planned a 3-day, 2-night No, it was 3 nights. It was
a long time.
It was a long time.
She was coming from the East Coast. It's a far way.
3 days, 3 nights. Yeah.
Right.
And it was like, we didn't talk about what would realistically what would happen if one of us wasn't feeling it. And so it was a very off kilter. So what we should have done is just been like, hey, listen, you're going to stay in the guest room. I'm going to stay in my room. We're going to just start out as friends. And if something seems to develop over the course of this time, then we'll go with it. And if it doesn't, the assumption is that we're going to just be friends and it's going to be platonic. And if something develops from that, great. And I should have done it that way because that's what fits with me. But instead I went, kind of just all out and was like, oh my gosh, 3 days of this romantic, like rendezvous with someone who showed up and I just wasn't attracted to. And then I'm backpedaling. Right.
Oh yeah. You're texting from the bathroom. And then I'm telling you, just take one for this.
I am not a take one for the team kind of person.
Help this lady out. Just give this lady a good trip and then go.
No,
then she leaves.
I know she left, but
that doesn't work. I found that out personally as well. But,
right.
Just if you're not into it, you're not into it. And there's no faking it.
But the thing is that there was an assumption that on her end that we were actually already in a relationship.
Right.
And my assumption was not that.
So, okay, let's say we're in your position and we get that feeling that this person thinks we're in a relationship already. I think that you need to address that immediately.
Oh, yes.
You need to immediately bring it up and say, whoa. Look, I would say I'm working with a dating coach or I'm working with a coach. And what I'm being coached to do is to really slow my roll and like meet a bunch of people. Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know how that feels to the other person. I'm trying to think how I would feel if someone said that to me. Would I feel like, oh my God, I am not good enough or this person's not into me? But it's a process, right? Like, I think people approach the dating apps so differently. And we were talking about this morning. I think some people just roll out of bed and they're like, bam, I got to get on these apps today. Right. And there's not a lot of thought put into it. And they're kind of fishing, right? They just want to see really what's out there. And then there's people who are real deliberate about it.
Like me, who like literally, I put my profile through Grammarly as a spell checker.
What?
To me,
literally, I found out yesterday that I didn't even put a bio on Tinder and it was just my photos. And I had 3 things, my karaoke go-to song, which I've only done karaoke once. And guess what? That happened to be the person's middle name, which is so weird. And so that's why she was really attracted to that. And then 2 other things that I put on there. And I just answered their I didn't even like fill out an answer. It was like, what are you into? And it only lets you choose like 5 things, which drives me crazy because they're like, pick 3 out of this. And there's like 20 things and they don't even have pickleball on there, which really upsets me.
You better send a message to their customer service.
Well, Bumble's already addressed one of my issues, which was I put woman looking for woman. And it's straight men, it's couples, it's all kinds of stuff that they need to have better screening. And they actually gave me a refund because I was really upset about that. And it's just like, if I'm looking to date and I'm sitting there looking through pictures, I mean, it is weird. It's like we're in a catalog and I'm looking through people's pictures and they're doing the same. And then I have men like messaging me. And I'm not talking a trans woman or anything. I'm talking like, biologically identified men who are identifying themselves as men. Like they're on there and they're messaging you. And it's like, where's the disconnect? And I think that's the thing. I think you have to find the app that works for you. I think I've been on 6 now in the last week.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
I know. And I've met my ex-wife through an app. I met another girlfriend through an app. And now I've met 3 really great people plus BFF friends, through this app situation. And I do think they're so different.
Yeah.
Right. You used Match.com.
I used Match and I used Elite Singles, but let's take it from a step from the apps. Let's move it forward a little bit. Cause I was having this interesting conversation the other day about this idea of exclusivity, right? And we've talked a little bit about it at the beginning of this episode is this, like I was in this sort of situation with this person who thought we were having an exclusive development of a relationship and I wasn't necessarily on that page, but I was thinking about it is, these apps make it pretty easy to think like don't assume exclusivity if you meet someone on an app, because they're also meeting other people.
Right.
And so the idea is we're dating and not exclusive until otherwise said. Mm-hmm. But I was trying to figure out why that felt really like new to me. And that's because, I mean, think about dating pre-app, especially as lesbians, when you might meet somebody and you have something in common with them, and they're like the only person you've met in like 2 years. Like you're not running into just hordes of beautiful, wonderful, career-minded, securely attached, financially well-off lesbians that are just waiting so that you can date 20 at a time. Mm-hmm. You usually meet one person and you start out dating them. And the assumption is that you're exclusive just because the pool of people to choose from is so limited. But now with dating apps, it's like the reverse. Right. And so I was trying to figure out where that paradigm shift was, like this idea of like, I come from an idea of like, you meet somebody and you just date them. And if it works out as a relationship, they become your partner. And if it doesn't work out as a relationship, you break up with them, but that you're not dating other people because there weren't other people to choose from. The apps have flipped that on its head, particularly for the LGBTQ community, who, you know, the population that's very, very small has been able to be consolidated into these apps. And now you do have choices like you might not have had before. And now the idea is you're not exclusive unless otherwise said. And that threw me off. And I've had to wrap my head around that. And I'm just wondering if you've noticed that, if you think back to when you were starting relationships, you know, maybe 20 years ago.
Well, it is interesting because, you know, I started out dating women in college, which was in the late 80s, early 90s, right? So there were some like gay dances in the basement of this pizza parlor. And then you could meet, like, there was the what was it called? The Lesbian and Gay Student Union. And then that was the only way I think that I knew to meet people, other than, I had a friend hitting on me, but other than that, like, yeah, I didn't know where to go. And especially as a newly out person. So college, I ended up actually dating 2 women and then moved to Seattle with one. And while we were in the relationship, we went to the Lesbian Resource Center and we got in the under 24 group, which was great for us because we got friends out of it, you know, and I imagine maybe some other people met people to date out of it. And so how did you date back then? It was, I think, like my experience, Seattle in the early 90s. Okay. There was the Wild Rose, which is still in existence, the bar. So you could go there and try and get, you know, meet somebody there. And then, through friends, I don't know any other way that there was no other way to date. I don't think.
Well, and it wasn't like you were like, as a lesbian in your 20s without apps, in my case, we barely had internet, you know, to be like, I've got a date on Friday night with, you know, Ella, and I've got a date on Saturday night with, you know, Heather, and I've got a date on Sunday with, you know, Jessica. Like, who would these 3 people be, and how would I come across them?
Plus, also, you're in town. Even in Seattle, the gay neighborhood was a very small neighborhood. So if you were dating multiple people and then you were seen like out with somebody else, you go out on Friday with one person and then on Saturday with another, the chances are the one you were with on Friday is going to walk past you with the other one on Saturday, you know,
or they dated each other.
Well, that was very common, right? Yeah. That was the joke. You go to a lesbian party and everyone in there has dated, and that now they're with different partners. And that's the thing. So that's a whole nother thing to talk about, but lesbian friendships, you know, which differ so much from, I think, you know, straight friendships and exes and straight exes. And I mean, there's unique situations, of course, but generally speaking, it was my experience that lesbians would remain friends after breaking up because they would be in the friend pool. That's all you had to talk about. If you went to my Northern Illinois University women's basketball game, all the lesbians were sitting right over there. You know, they were in a group, and like, that was it.
Well, the pool was very small. And so, I mean, we usually found one person and we just started dating them. But these apps have really thrown it upside down. But these apps have also given us other names for things. Like, you know, I'm going to ask you about this because you had a little bit of experience in this. But, you know, I go into the apps, I'm like, I want a relationship, or I go into dating, even if it's not the apps. I've met my current partner not on the apps. But this idea of a situationship, right? I mean, I think back when I was younger, we called it friends with benefits, but that's not even it. Situationship might even be slightly different. But what is your definition of a situationship, and how does it differ from
a nightmare,
a relationship? Okay.
A nightmare.
Yeah.
It was a nightmare.
What is it? What is it?
Nightmare.
How did it look different than a relationship for you?
Well, Coach Kendra, you know, of Breakup Bestie, says it's disrespectful. And I used to think, well, people can have different ways of being, but for me, it was disrespectful. It just turned out to be disrespect. It was basically, you want all the benefits of a relationship, but you don't want to say you're in one, and you don't want to, actually, it's like you're getting the benefits without the responsibilities, and you're basically taking that person off the market. So I was taken off the market for dating because I was in a situationship, and yet the situationship, when I was in it, I really tried to justify it. As you know, I justified a lot of things that happened in that situationship. And now I would not do that. I would absolutely not do it. I feel like, decide what you want. If you just want to hook up, then tell people, hey, I just want to hook up. If you just want like something casual, which I've never heard of that working in the lesbian world. Maybe it does. And none of my straight friends do that either. Like all my straight friends, and maybe it's because of our age, we're over 50. What they have now is when they're going out to date, or my best friend's been going to these singles events, and she's going to meet a partner, right? Like maybe it's our age. I don't want to be in a situationship ever again. I don't want to be in something, because it's ambiguous what's happening, right?
So, okay. So define for us, like you say, all of the kind of the benefits, like what is one benefit of a situationship for that person who wants it? And then what's one of the responsibility that they're shirking? Sex.
They get sex when they want. Okay. So because you're like hooked up, I mean, you're connected, right? Oh, we're in a situationship. So therefore the situationship I was in was allegedly exclusive, right? So we agreed not to see other people, and we spent a lot of time together. And so they get sex when they want it, but then, and we happened to be living together, and there was this thing of, I don't want to date you. I don't want to be in a relationship with you. And I'm like, but you're living in my house. We're sleeping together, and we're having dinner together. So it's like a way for an avoidant person. I think and I think that's why Coach Kendra is so against them, is that it's a way to, what did they used to say? What did people used to say? Like, get the cow, or what was it? Like,
oh, you don't want to, don't buy, you want to buy the cow because you get the milk for free.
Yeah. So like, I don't know.
We could try to do that poison one again that we've tried on like 6 episodes. If you drink the poison, someone dies.
But it's like getting the milk for free without the cow, something like that. It's like, because then the person who's like really trying to be respectful or have an actual relationship isn't getting that. And then I think the person who's promoting the situationship isn't taking any emotional, they're doing no emotional work. It's that they're getting the benefits of sex, of companionship, of perhaps a place to stay, perhaps a person to have dinner with, and kind of, do those things that even single people sometimes don't want to do alone all the time. But then they don't have to take any, emotion, ownership of like the emotional issues. And
even the physical or logistical issues. It was like, there was no need to tell you when she was going to be back from being out. You didn't know where she was during the day. Not that you need to keep tabs, but it was like, are we doing dinner tonight? Like, do you want to meet back at 6? And it was like, well, I'll let you know. And then sometimes she'd let you know, and sometimes she wouldn't. Well, I don't have to tell you, you're not my partner. And you're like, but I was sitting here waiting to figure out if we were going to have dinner. So there were some logistical holdups, but it was like when she needed you, not just physically, but when she needed you emotionally also, you were like summoned. Like, I need someone, I need a shoulder to cry on. I need someone to help me with this. But I do wonder, I mean, you're talking about an imbalance. She wanted a situationship. You did not. I wonder if 2 people who want a situationship could really thrive with that type of relationship.
Well, they say 2 avoidants can, but then they fizzles out because neither one's putting in the effort. I think that's what, and my mistake in getting into a situationship was thinking that it would transition to a relationship. And that's what also, even though I listened to all Coach Kendra's stuff before I got into the situationship, I didn't take that like seriously, or I assumed, okay, well, everything will be so great, it'll transition to a relationship, but it didn't.
She'll want it. Yeah. She'll see how good this is and want to make it formal.
Right. And now, as a person who's gotten a lot of coaching, continued with my therapist, that's a boundary that I would not do that again. I would say, no, I don't want that. I don't want these certain things, the living together, the sex or whatever, without any other kind of commitment. And, you think, oh, I can have sex with whoever, or I can, like have a casual relationship. And maybe some people can, and none of my friends do. I've never experienced that. I've never experienced it personally. I'm not capable of it because I think that once you start to invest in a person, you care about them. Like you care about their welfare. You care what's happening to them. And I think it's really hard to cut that off, you know?
Yeah. Well, and be in that feeling of that topsy-turvy where you're investing in them emotionally and they're not investing back. And it almost becomes like a chase. Like, what do I have to do to get you to love me enough to commit to me? Why won't you commit to me? I'm giving you everything that I have. You're taken care of. You're loved. You have someone to eat dinner with. Well, I don't understand. Why am I not good enough for you to actually formalize this into a relationship? And then it becomes, whether we know it or not, or believe it or not, it feels like a little bit of a quest on our end. Like, I'm going to win this person over. I'm going to have them see how good life is with me or how bad life is without me. And I know you went through that during your kind of ending of things. It's like, if she's going to realize how hard her life is without me. And she's going to come, back and be like, I want to be in a relationship. I was wrong.
She did come back, but she never said she wanted to be in a relationship. She just wanted to keep me hanging on. And I think that that's what Coach Kendra's talking about. If from the beginning it is established that this person doesn't want an actual relationship and you do, you gotta leave. Because,
believe them. Yeah.
Yes.
The idea is that you have to be in alignment. Like,
right.
If you both want a situationship, that's fine.
Right.
But the other danger of that is one person may also evolve into wanting a relationship and the other person's like, hey, I told you from the beginning, I don't want anything serious. So being able to be mindful of what your long-term goals are.
Well, and you need to set that up, I think. So on Tinder, I apparently was advertising that I didn't know what I wanted yet. Like, cause I chose people two of them who said, long-term relationship. And the other one was like just friends. So, okay, we can just be friends. Cool. And the just friends one has turned into something else, but we were talking about that and looking at the Tinder profile. And she's like, well, you said that, you weren't sure about what you wanted. And I'm like, I did. And I thought I had checked long-term relationship. And I'm like, gosh, I really set myself, I just did it. I didn't really take it seriously. I didn't put the bio in there. And I'm like, it's interesting that I did meet 3 really cool people, but it's like, at least take a little time to be more conscientious than I was and figure out first when they're asking you, what do you want? Cause you can just say hook up. You can just say, you don't know, but I didn't mean to say, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about it when I was going through the apps and it was like, what do I want? And I was like, I want to be the person who dates lots of people. And like, I play the field. And then I did start to do that a little bit. And
you didn't like it.
I didn't like it, even though I started doing it when I had this kind of emotional connection with this other person. I didn't like it. I mean, there was a point at which I had a spreadsheet and I was putting in all the people there about what I knew about it. And I was like, I don't like this. I want to find one person who I really like. I want to get done with all this other stuff. And I just want to focus on them. And if it doesn't work with them, I'll go back to the drawing board. But I want to invest all in. And that's what I tried to do with my current partner. Was like, we met outside of Meetup, or we met at Meetup, which was outside of the apps. And it was like, oh, I'm just going to actually date. And then I did, I got off the apps and I was like, I don't want to entertain the possibility of someone else.
But you did in the end you've got several good friends from the apps. So it's like, that's what, I don't want to trash the apps completely for dating or for, but you've got to know, you must have your head on straight before you get on there because you can it's like whiplash, and you can start to feel bad about yourself, right? Like you can these could be self-esteem hits. And I think that's the thing. You have to be really confident and happy, I think, as a human being before you go putting yourself in there. And I'll tell you my experience when being not such a happy person and being on the apps, totally different than now. I'm totally happy. If the apps don't work out, if I don't get anything out of the apps, no problem.
Well, and it's important to understand it has nothing, unless you put some really weird stuff up on the apps, but it usually has nothing to do with the person. It's the fit, right? If you're not getting hits, it's because the people who are out there aren't feeling like they're connecting with you. Do you really want to be on a date with one of these people? No, or someone ghosts you. Okay. It's rude. I do think ghosting is rude, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know. Would I rather have a pity date? No. But it is hard because it's all consolidated into one place. And I mean, I think the apps were really good for me to create boundaries, to figure out what I really wanted. And to, I would never have had the opportunity to see what was out there without them and create a relationship that I have now, because like I said, when I got off the apps, it wasn't because the apps were horrible. I got off the apps because I wanted to commit to one person and start dating them. And I didn't want to be lured in by the apps.
But the topic of our conversation was like the beginnings of a relationship. So what made you want to commit to one person? Like, what was that? Was it one thing? Like, how did you know that?
When we first met, I was like, I like her. We have a lot in common. I'd really like to get to know her better. And we started as friends. And so I was like, okay. And at that point, I was still on the apps and I was still looking at other people or talking with other people. But then, we started to hang out more and I was like, wow, I really like this person. And if I want to invest and see if there's something here, I don't want to have my emotions split, my time split, my attention split between all these people. I was talking to a couple different people from the apps and I contacted them and I said, listen, I want to give all of my attention to this one person right now. And so I'm going to stop talking with you. And they're like, okay, good luck. And it was like, I didn't have to, right? I could have kept dating a bunch of people, but at that point I just felt distracted by other people, that if I was trying to create an emotional investment with one person, I didn't want to be distracted.
Right. So that makes sense. And you have to feel those, you really need to check in with yourself,
right.
and not override it, because like I've been told not to, or I've been told by certain people, override this or override that. And I do listen, but I don't listen at the same time. Like,
no,
I feel like my whole life is intuition. I just go with my intuition, and then what will happen will happen. But I think this time I am slowing things down. I'm taking Dr. Frankie's advice a lot. I slow things down, slow my roll. I'm going way slower than I would have in the past, and I'm keeping people still. I'm not being exclusive right away.
And I think that's an important lesson, like I learned, right? Because I'm saying two different messages in one. One is widen the field, right? All this stuff. And then, but the other one is I'm like, nope, narrow in on one person. But I think for me, there's like a line, right? Like at the very beginning, I want to like put my hat in the ring and figure out what's going on. Right. But once I met my current partner, I was like, this person is relationship material. This person is someone who I could build a life with, and I want to get to know them. And it was more than dating for me. It felt like, it didn't feel like, hey, you want to go out on Friday night to a movie? It felt like, hey, we have a connection here and I really want to explore this. And it felt different than just like dating a bunch of people. So for me, once I felt that, I knew that I was at the beginning of a relationship. I didn't want to date other people. But until I was in an actual like beginning of a relationship, and
you guys clarified that, that's the thing. I think it's, again, all about communication. You can do whatever you want. Right? Yeah, everybody can do what they want as long as they're communicating that. Like, if you're like, I like to sleep with different people every week, and the other person's like, okay, cool. But if they're like, no, that does not work for me, right? Like, do your thing. Right. Do what you want to do, but be honest about it.
You and I were talking about it earlier, right? Like there's, when I was going through all of my breakup stuff and I was heartbroken and I was trying to figure out about getting back out there, and you had given me the advice to just sit with myself. And, I know it came from a good place of like, figure out what you want and heal from the trauma and the wounds and stuff before you throw yourself back into the bullpen. But, at the same time, we've also talked about the fact that, there aren't hard and fast timelines, right? It's like, I told myself after a breakup a while ago, I was like, I'm going to wait 1 year. But after 5 months, I met somebody that I wanted to be with, and I was emotionally ready to be with that person. And so, I wouldn't advocate like getting out of like a 26-year marriage and then like the next day being on, on the apps and going out and then marrying someone. That isn't like what I'm saying, but I am saying that when you are ready. Some people I've met.
But what if somebody was in a 26-year marriage, but it had been dead for 10 years and they get out of it and they're like, this is my life. I'm going to live it.
Again, it depends on if they're emotionally healed.
Right.
I feel like, and we can't be totally healed, but if we're emotionally past some of the really, really hard stuff and we are back in tune with ourselves, that's when we're ready. Some people, it takes a lot longer. I was in this women's healing circle and it took some people 6-8 years and they were still mourning and could not move on. And that's a whole other issue. But the idea was they're probably not ready. Somebody else might be ready after 6 months. To go. And so there's no real hard and fast timeline as long as you know what's good for you and your partner agrees what's good for you. Because taking the next steps, I think about like moving in together. Some people say, oh, it's too soon. You shouldn't move in together. Who says?
Right.
Who says? I I met my partner. I had a partner who I have a child with, and we went on one date. We met on a camping trip, and we had known each other before, but not very well. We met on a camping trip. We went camping for a couple of days with a group of people. By the end of the camping trip, she decided to quit her job across the country, sell her furniture, hop in her car and drive out and move in with me. And guess what? We were together for 13 years. We had we had so many great times. We have a child from it. We had a whole life, and, we're still connected and friends today. And so who's to say that that was a bad idea? And then other people, I had a partner who I waited almost 2 years to move in with. This was a long, long time ago. And we only ended up living together for like 6 months and broke up because it just wasn't the right fit. So it's like, who knows these things?
Well, who knows? I think that's where you got to just go with what you are comfortable with and you want to do. And you can take other people's, advice in and then sift through it and figure out what you want to do.
Exactly. And as long as, I think the most important thing, two things. One is as long as you understand what it is that you want and need, and you're really clear about that to yourself, and you're boundaried with that. But at the same time, you're also communicating that to any potential partner, and you're on the same page, you're good to go.
Right. And the way to figure out how you're good with yourself and what you want is by therapy and coaching and introspection and talking to friends and having all the supports, because I think, like I've said this before, but connection with others, no matter what way, is always a good thing. Right. And so if you deepen those connections, they're going to help you through this process. And one of those BFF friends I just met, she's been 2.5 years out of a 29-year marriage, and she's looking at the apps, and when she gets on, she doesn't want it. And I said, you don't do it. If it's making you feel uncomfortable, just don't do it. If you get on there and you feel sick, if you don't like it, just don't do it.
Well, trust your gut, right? That visceral reaction.
Hang out with friends instead.
Right. Just trust your gut. You'll know when you're ready. And the other thing too is, as you're saying, like, she got on the apps and then changed her mind. You have the right to change your mind. You may agree that you want to be in a situationship, and then you're down the road and you're like, I don't like this. And you have the right to change your mind. Just because you signed on, there's no contract. If you said that you wanted to, probably move in with somebody, after about 6 months and you're in the relationship and you're still not ready, then don't move in. Right. Just because at one point you said you were going to, just be open and communicative and say, I'm with
yourself too.
Exactly. Right.
Check in with yourself every day.
Right. You're not obligated to anybody to do what is expected of you, or what you even said in terms of what you might have wanted. If you wanted, Tracy, if you say you want a long-term relationship, but you've met like 3 people that you really like, and you're like, listen, I'm not ready for a long-term relationship yet. I actually want to date the 3 of you for the next 6 months and figure out what I want. You have the right to change your mind. But as long as as long as you're clear with the other people who may have connected with you under one premise and you've now changed it.
Yeah. And I would be clear about that from the front, the get-go. And then they can make up their mind, right? I don't want to do that. Or I want you to only want me or whatever. Fine. That's great.
Yeah.
But each person needs to check in with themselves and know what they want.
Exactly. Boom. Mic drop. Check with yourself. Keep open lines of communication, and your relationship will be as successful as Tracy's and my previous relationships have been.
You can only hope. You
can only hope, right? All of our exes, we can ask them how successful they are.
All
right. Well, Tracy, it has been lovely chatting about this topic. There's always so much to say, and always so much to think about, but really this idea of the flow and the pace of a new relationship is just such an interesting thing to think about. But really having your own clarity and being able to communicate that with your dating partners is really the key to figuring out how this whole thing works. So until we talk again on one of our future episodes, go out there and rock those relationships. If you liked what you heard, check out our show notes for resources from today's episode. Make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram under Rock That Relationship, and go to our website at rockthatrelationship.com for updated episodes and more great information.
Thanks for listening. Now go rock those relationships.